First off, I want to make very clear that I do not recognize George Bush's claim that I'm an extended member of the ship CVL 30. It's a delirium, it's a delusion. It's an attempt to justify torturing a child from the Pittsburgh public schools. I don't care if my father knew about it. None of that matters to me. You do not draft disabled children into involuntary service and hold them responsible for illegal secret government homework. Now, the people who did it turned it into a corporation. It's like that drone thing going on in New Jersey right now. Nobody knows really where it's coming from, but it's clearly organized and has been around for a while. And enough people have noticed it that the dunce caps have come off the FBI about it. Well, they have a master narrative, it's called. They have what they call a big picture. And in the big picture, let's get this straight. The people who started AIDS are represented as the heroes. Okay. And we know that from looking at Diamond DeGallo, Scale, Burston, and Robert Fripp, Leslie Katz, and John Schulman, and the fact that they claim the whole thing is justified because virginity proves rape. And they carry on about soon to be another ice age and weapons of mass destruction, and so on and so forth. And Clint Eastwood says, oh, well, he's a wise man who's getting them over the hurdle, and he'll torture Jimmy Curry to death if necessary to vindicate Reagan, the totem of them all, the best friend of John Lennon and the drug cartels. Yeah, so when you have that magic circle, that arrangement whereby the killers are the very best friends of the killed, and the people who tried to warn and get help and apprehend and stop the madness are top sacredly symbolic perpetrators. And it works out in, the blackboard of minority studies in critical race theory. And the grudge resonators that get implanted from corporate music. They turn people's minds into grudge resonators. So the neurohypnotics of the situation have the perpetrators as the heroes. Okay, so let's look at that dial. If you believe that the perpetrators are the heroes because you don't believe they're the perpetrators, in other words, Yoko Ono found the letters, then in that construct, it might make sense to cheer somebody who had a selective and dishonest healthcare system being assassinated. Might make sense. Don't ask me to. I don't get into violence that much. I really don't get into it at all. So, what they did with me was they tagged me before I was too young to understand it, for sex, so they could say abortion was violence and you can't have conscientious objection if you've had an abortion. So that's why they had Benjamin Spock running with Martin Luther King, because he was infidelitous. Yeah, it's all pretty obvious if you allow yourself to think about it. But if you have the master narrative construct put together, where you have the pizza man delivering the assassination to the symbolic villain, the CEO, right? And he Adam Eisenstadt's off to McDonald's and waits to be busted in the golden arches of Tel Aviv. Sympathy. Okay. So you're supposed to do like this to him, right? If you're a leftist from Seattle. But if you look honestly at the realities of Gullis first and appearing in Seattle Center and a 1979 record by Robert Fripp, you realize that in all likelihood, Mangione, Luigi, was not taking out the villain of the AIDS attack. He was one of the villains. He was representing the villains of the AIDS attack because they want to collectivize everything under the puppet masters of the oligarchy. So everybody are serfs again, and they want to march cannon fodder off and so on. So the bottom line is that the master narrative always does a flip flop when you have people deluded into believing. I mean, I'm no fan of inequitous organizations, but when you have people deluded into believing that the worst perpetrators are the heroes, you have a situation of topsy-turvy analysis. So I don't know. I'm not saying I know that's true, but if you look at Luigi, if you go back to the Burson script, there was a Luigi Cardillo. If you go back to the origins of the Burson script, there was a Luigi Freddy in Italian cinema. And what these people want to do is they want to glorify snuff movies. Like there was a camera caught the action. And this is what it's bloodthirstiness. When at the origins of cinema, Benito Mussolini's son, garbing like, one of the UW dialecticians, talked about the beautiful flowers of fire that were dropped from airplanes by bombs, the plumes, and he was a favorite in Hollywood. So when you look at the excesses in Hollywood and Chernuka cinema in Russia, you see the aesthetics of mercenary forces who prefer destruction to civil rights and common sense and basic decency. The worst of these people came up with this terrible, weird, cruel, criminal, sadistic corpse smasher war game of the Sea and the Star of David. And the people playing it are patently and obviously allying themselves with the people who designed the game. And they're trying to say that because they pulled the wool over my eyes, they played this game called The Blue Cloak of the Deceived Husband on an impacted neuroplasm of a traumatized deaf person. They think they're brilliant. And they don't like the fact that I advertise what they did as not being brilliant. So they get into the resonators of grudge in their TV, in their music scene. And they're all resonating grudge, and the idea is to turn people into drones and target them at a surrogate because somebody from below might react against somebody who's on top, right? When you have this idea that the people on top were all involved, it makes sense. But the people on top, the administration, have been like arguably like just exactly like the Palestinians. They've ignored that this happened. And they're now getting blowback for ignoring that it happened. So what I have proposed to the police department, for example, is to get straight from the evidence. Oh my God, that word. Please don't say that word. Don't say that word. From the evidence. Oh my God, don't say that word. Stop chewing the carpet, officer. From the evidence, who is responsible and what happened? Is that so far-fetched or far out of a thing to do? I don't think so. I've never thought so. I've always been an open book. And of course, Brian Eno puts on a spinner meeting with Cornel West and says, "What is the meaning of open book? What is the meaning of open book?" To me, those kinds of tic tac toe operations are just meant to be sadistic to the mind. And they endorse it as saying it's a mind game. You know how Lenin loved mind games and he's the spirit master of the whole blah, yeah, yeah. It's bloodthirsty. And we're going to see a rise in elder abuse. We're going to see de-empathizing, dehumanizing. The whole contraption is based on the psychotic dehumanization of somebody having a girlfriend. I mean, the military, the Green Party, the chief executive office go berserk at the idea of somebody having a girlfriend. They go berserk. Drives them. It is as hard on them as the word evidence. It drives them berserk.